All right, I think we are at the top of the hour. We're going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to one of the first breakout sessions. The session's name, if I can remember correctly, is called Designing a Path Towards AI-Ready Data Standards. And I obviously omitted the standard on the slides when I was doing it for some reason. But this is a session convened by the ESEP Data Readiness Cluster, a cluster that started about 2 years ago and has been working on developing some community tools and guidelines on making the open environmental and Earth data sets useful for the AI machine learning application development. And I have my co-conveners like Carmen in the front and Rob there. Stacy, unfortunately, is one of those who get delayed by the weather. So she is in Seattle airport and maybe she's calling in on the phone right now. But thanks, Stacy, for putting together some slides. Oh, we have 6 people on the phone. Great. A quick overview of the session. Before I do that, I want to remind everyone the participation guideline for ESEP. Make sure when you're providing comments and in the discussion, respect everyone's opinion and then be inclusive as much as possible. And on the sketch page, you will find all the notes documents that we invite everyone to contribute and provide your information so we can follow up with some of the development as well as provide feedback for the session. So feel free go into the session notes document, which is also linked on the sketch page. There is a hyperlink, if I can refresh. Yes, there's a link on the sketch page if you need to go through the note documents in there. And Rob is in charge of taking notes for the discussion today, and feel free to contribute as well. There are some related materials in the session, and thanks for Leslie pointing out that I missed the care principles for the discussion for today. So I already added the care principles for indigenous data onto the session discussion page. And that's an oversight for me that did not have that early on. So, and without further ado, we're going to go into our very first activity for the session using the Multimeter. Again, please go into this Multimeter if you haven't get a chance to. And for the Multimeter, the first question we're asking is that what's your relationship with AI? There are 5 options you can choose, all that apply to your personal identity in the relationship to AI. Obviously, we have a lot of data provider manager in the room. This is the true nature of ESEP to some extent. Let's see, we have 32 people in the, I think we'll have more than 32 people in the room. So let's see if we can get more people. We have 10 active developers of AI machine learning applications. There are 17 interested observers. Right? There's still some space in front. All right, give it another 30 seconds. All right, let's see if we can hit 50 people. Awesome. So yeah, we have quite a lot like data managers interested in how I think that makes sense. People want to improve the data that they can provide to accelerate the adoption and research development using those data for the AI applications. And I'm really glad to see there are active AI machine learning developers in the room as well. So thanks for everyone contributing to this discussion. And now I think it's the time that I should say, let's close the door. Nobody should leave this room without achieving something. Now the second activity, I want everyone, so today we're gonna, because if you look at the agenda for this year's meeting, there's another session about analysis-ready data standard developments. And I want to gauge everyone's experience and knowledge regarding AI-ready data, analysis-ready data, and both for your knowledge and your experience in actively developing those things. You can, if you say, I have no idea of what you're talking about, just leave them as 0 and 0, that's fine. 0 is the most knowledgeable and most, no knowledge and then no experience in development. 10 is that it's your day job doing that. So rank that on a scale. Let's see overall where people are at on that spectrum. Right, we're gonna give another minute. Seems like Nas data has more like follower. Right, I'm just seeing the number. Let's see if we can hit 50. And then we're gonna take a screenshot of this. All right, we need 2 more. Okay, there we go. We got 50. At this moment, I would like everyone just to make a new friend. And for the next 2 to 3 minutes, please turn to your nearest neighbor that you haven't talked to so far to share what's your experience with AI-ready data or analysis-ready data and what you want to get out of the session. 3 minutes, I'm counting. All right, 1 minute warning, 1 minute warning. All right, if we can wrap up the conversation. Right. All right. Thanks, everyone. I hope you all made new friends just in that short, like 3 minutes. And I'm glad to see a really good, active conversation in the room. And sorry, I did not think about that for the online people, but we have now 13 people online, so which is a great thing. We do have breakout room activities for the online people later on, so please stay around. And there's Jamboard activities for you all to participate. And just a quick overview of the data readiness cluster that we started in 2021. That at the beginning, it's really focused on the engagement with community about data providers, with data providers and data users, specifically the developer of AI machine learning applications using environmental and earth science data sets. And since in the last year, in April, we published our beta version of the AI readiness checklist with some pilot assessment activities in the Pittsburgh meeting, trying to get feedback about our checklist. And that information are all available on our clusters website, as well as there's a DOI associated with the beta version of the AI readiness checklist. So starting from late last year and early this year, we really turned our focus on improving our checklist based on the feedback we got from users. So last year we did almost 4 dozens of data set assessment using the checklist, and expanded some engagement with different communities. So just earlier this year, we had we got reached out by a bipartisan policy center, as well as some NIH funded centers regarding the definition and the concept of AI-ready data. So I think we have the fortunate benefits of the AI has been taking off recently, and it becomes a shiny object. Everyone wants to talk about it. I think it's a perfect opportunity to seize this opportunity to improve and modernize the data management overall as a way to improve the data management to serve a broad community, not just for the AI researcher and AI developers. And so the reason why we convened this session this year here is trying to see if we can forge a collaborative pathway and to discuss how we can achieve the AI readiness standards and what's the difference between this effort and with other things, and what the gap we can fill as a group together. And for those who haven't seen our checklist in the past, basically the checklist focused on 4 aspects of the data sets. And I still extend the invitation for anyone who couldn't see the screen well, just sit in the front, because the screen is a little bit small. So if you want, I really don't bite. We have 4 aspects for the documentation and quality, access, and preparation. And for documentation, it's really to enable the users to understand how the data is organized, and then provide information tools to increase the data usability for the AI machine learning development. For the quality information, it's focusing how we can demonstrate those fit for purpose of the AI applications, and how that may affect the trustworthiness of those AI application developments. And for the access, it's focused on the efficiency and the reproducibility of the R&D process for the AI machine learning development. And for the preparation aspects, is to help identify those common data services and tools needed to improve the usability of those of the data sets for AI machine learning applications. For example, have those labels being identified or outliers being identified for specific for different type of use cases. And now here's some doodling activities to look at, not for you to doodling, to look at some ongoing initiatives or the basic landscape analysis when we're talking about AI machine learning ready data, specifically in the earth environmental science domain or related domains. So the first group mostly focused on the use case driven, really specifically about specific type of applications like land use, land cover classification. That has been a quite popular development on providing the training and then the data set for that. And so Readiness ML Hub has been funded by NASA to provide as a place to to store and share the machine learning training data sets. And then Foundry ML, which is a newly founded initiative by NSF, it started from the material science domain, and then has expanded to a broad domain than just the material science. And the Space ML, which is from the front FDL, from JPL, and with a collaboration with European side, ESA and JAXA, to focusing on the development of machine learning data sets for space and earth science applications. So that is the first group, really focused on specific use case that oftentimes might be easier and more straightforward to achieve because you know the target of specific use case and applications, where there's also those data type driven activities. And the first one I listed, unfortunately, I couldn't find any active link anymore. That it's an ESA funded project called AIready Earth Observation. So that is really focused on providing a place and standard specification to share the training data sets for the Earth observation. So it's not really for a specific application type, but more broad standards how to share the training. And I'm really sad to see I couldn't find a really active link right now. So I assume there's the transition of that project going on. But on the other more happy news, on the ML Commons, which is more industry driven, that has been driven by the industry like Google, NVIDIA, and other those industry, and looking at how the developer can really harmonizing and provide those data set for different type applications, like natural language processing, the speech recognition, and all the things. So they even have some environmental data set for earthquakes and time series prediction and forecast. So that is a group that has really broadened the participation, and by sharing those data set, and that often leads to the benchmarking of the model development as well as for the model comparison efforts. And the last category is more the general efforts on different ways to support the development of AI and machine learning ready data. So our cluster within USAP has been doing the checklist, where NASA last year or early this year just announced the support of like 6 projects focusing on those domain agnostic tools. One of the focus is on the AI, machine learning ready data for heliophysics and earth science, where NOAA has some non-competitive funding to support some pilots AI and machine learning data product development. And there's a research coordination network funded by NSF looking at AI readiness and reproducibility of machine learning development. And within NIH, they have an office of a data science strategy. And in the past 2 years, they have been really emphasizing the support to improve the usability of all health-related data sets for data science and data-driven application development. And last year, the Office of Science Technology Policy and released the final report for the National AI Research Resource within really focused on the improving the data quality and accessibility for supporting the AI machine learning application development. So that is just quite a broad overview of some of the current landscape of AI and machine learning data development landscape. And I'm gonna done talking soon and have you hear somebody else talk, so it's not just me like monologuing. And going a little bit, take one step back, and when we first started the AI-ready efforts, the first question or the most commonly asked question we had is always that, so what's the difference between AI-ready and the Nas ready? I think Ken asked that question at some point, and other people also ask the same question. So now just looking at the AIready universe or the AIreadyverse, that CEOS, the Committee on Earth Observing Satellites, has been spearheading the AIready specifications for the land and other different products. And Eugene is going to talk about some of the ongoing development for the specification or standards that's now OGC and ISO is going to try to pick up I think using CEOS as a blueprint and trying to expand that to a much more official standards for geospatial data. And AIready Zone is another group that's really industry-driven, that have a lot of startup and those commercial satellite geospatial data companies participating in the discussion about analysis-ready data. But both groups has been really focused on Earth observations or satellite data set imageries. And where on the cloud side, the PanGeo community has been starting something called PanGeo Forge, where you can convert those existing archive of the data into analysis-ready cloud-optimized data set, or ARCO. That's the session right across the wall is doing right now. And then Open Data Cube is another emphasis on the geospatial and Earth observation, trying to create data cubes for different type. And from your European side, there's an OpenEO platform. And I mentioned about the OGC and ISO joint working group focusing on the analysis-ready data standard working group that I think had official meeting early this year, trying to kick off the efforts. So for data readiness checklist that our cluster has been iterating and then improving in the last 4 or 5 months, really emphasizing on 3 things: the clarification of the purpose of the checklist. So what's the purpose of the checklist? It's really for the providers to prioritize the data improvement, and for the users identifying the most suitable and proper data set for the application. And wherefore the second component is to modify the checklist to based on the feedback we receive from the users and based on the assessment feedback we receive. Really, we did a notebook expansion on the checklist related to quality, because quality is the one that we got the most questions about and the most feedback about. And also additional question about the data access via the APIs and some definition to clarify and then make it easy to use for the assessments. And also we reshuffled some of the structures of the checklist to put the priority on the data quality, documentation access, and the preparation as an additional step in the checklist, where here you can see we provided updated checklist assessment tool, where it's exactly using the, right now it's still manual assessment, like the AIready assessment is still a whole manual process, which can be time consuming. Our hope is that at some point with standards or the metadata that we can accelerate the assessment using automated tool in the future, where in the updated checklist assessment tools that provided general data set information and then really uplifting the quality section to the top of the data set, where everyone is constantly asking us about the data quality. So that makes most sense to put the quality at forefront. And they're also trying to piloting something called the usability score based on the information provided in the assessments, and how we can use those usability score to let the users decide which data set most useful for them, and also let the data provider and managers to decide which data set they should prioritize for the improvement. And with the assessment results, the idea is trying to feed all those information, because we have more than 50 questions. No users want to go through all the 50 questions to figure out which data set fits their needs. So idea is to create data cards that can be directly linked to a data set web page, where as a high-level overview, the users can look at those are human readable informations about whether those data set is useful for them or not, and based on the quality, and also as well as the score of the different labels, whether different type of preparation has been done for the data sets, they can decide whether those data set is easy for the application to use or not. So this is our first attempt, and we're gonna send out broad feedback to get people's feedback on whether this data card is useful or not, because it's always hard to ask what do you want to see, but if you throw out an example, people won't be too resistant to throw darts at it. So please, if you have any feedback or questions, please feel free. Are they all done already? Something just moved out. All right, and so here's just a friendly reminder, you can always ask questions throughout the entire session. Well, now I'm gonna pause to see if there's any questions before we switch to next presentation about AIready from Eugene. Yes, Larry, can you run the mic? Thanks. And also, if you want, you can also type just in the Mentimeter.
Hi, I'm John Ralph from NCEI. I was wondering, you were showing a rubric of the quality and AI readiness. I was wondering if the usability score, rather than being a static score, might be more useful if the user also had a rubric of the things that were important to them in their use case, and you could map that against the rubric from the AI readiness and then find the data sets that were most usable, not a static usability score, but more of an evaluated score based on needs.
So that's a really interesting question, because the most challenging thing we found in the last year and a half is balancing the generalizability of the checklist versus a specific use case. Every time when you talk with a specific developer of an AI application, there's like, oh, I need this information for my application. Where at the same time, when you become too specific, then the standard becomes too narrow focus and then can be hardly applied to other side. So we are trying to find the balance at the general level as well as specific level. Our compromise is that for the usability score, it's not really geared towards specific model development or specific application use case, whereas more on the overall usability of the data set for various applications. Where for the, if you look at the data card, why we try to add labels or tags, that those things might be relevant for different use cases. For example, if you have outliers identified in the data set, and then for people who want to develop an algorithm for outlier detection, they probably won't use that data set because that is not really relevant for the use case. And also if you have a label of a land cover type identified in the data set, and then they will say, oh, this is something interesting. So the label becomes a filtering of the data set, where the usability score overall as overall usability of the data set.
But looking at those filtered scores is still a manual process.
Yes, right, definitely. Yeah, I'm not saying that everything is done in one setting, right? That we're not saying that it's going to be done next year and then I'm just going to retire. That's yes, Matt.
So Doug, that was really nice. Thanks for the presentation. To what extent do you think that the attributes that you're showing here are things that need to be assessed by a person versus could be automated or semi-automated in terms of being able to assess the existing data that are out there in the repository landscape?
Yeah, when you asked that question, I immediately thought about your architect data center for the fair assessment of those data sets. So a lot of things can be assessed, a lot of questions can be assessed based on metadata information. And that's why we want to figure out, but right now it's in a messy situation where we need to figure out what's the common metadata standard should be doing the assessment, right? That's why we're trying, next step, we want to do a crosswalk between our checklist and with some of those existing metadata standards, and then where all those metadata information can feed into the questions, the list of questions. So that become the semi-automatic or automatic assessment for those. And then part of them can still need some of the human intervention in the assessment process. One last question if we have. Okay, cool, yeah. How and when do we move away from this human AIready assessment to, okay, yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Ken. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, this is similar to what Matt was saying a minute ago, but I phrased the question this way because I think we have to move away from human-based assessments, and
yeah,
we've seen it in every assessment model, data stewardship maturity assessment, for example. It's really expensive for humans to do this. Even laying it out as simply as possible just takes too much effort, and so we can't do it at scale across all of the data that just needs to be done. So we've got to figure out how to move it into a more automated system. And that's important also for the people who are developing the data sets, because they need those sort of compliance checker types tools. As they're iteratively developing their data sets, they run their assessment on it themselves. Oh, I'm missing X, Y, and Z, I can add it. So I would sort of really encourage this group to think, how do we move away as rapidly as possible from human-based assessments to automated ones, even if it means maybe the assessment isn't as comprehensive and as wonderful, but then we can iterate on that automation and on those sort of compliance testing tools. Because I think that's the only way we're going to do this at the scale that we need to.
I think it's the same issue with all those like data principles, try to implement that and how you verify and validate whether you are really implementing those like principles. And so that's the same thing we're facing and trying to, like you said, if we can accelerate, it would be much better. But right now, it's at the beta version of the checklist, we're trying to get feedback of whether it's the right direction and then what feedback we can get. So with that, I think I'm going to stop here and then ask Eugene come here to give us a quick overview of the AIready, Analysis Ready Data Working Group from OGC and ISO. Is presenting on behalf of Dr. Lipin D and also Dave Mayer, who's in another session right now. I'm gonna put the slides on and present. Same thing, you can still ask questions at the same time in the Mentimeter.
Thank you. I think Dr. Rao already covered everything. Probably I'm down. I think it's basically, I think this one is we formed already chartered a standard working group within the OGC, and also chartered the ISO working group, which is 176 series. So basically, it's going to be have a part one, which is basically cover the fundamental, and then series will be the different product family. Which one is this one? Right? Oh, this one.
Yeah, maybe.
This one. Yeah, this one. Perfect. Okay. So basically cover a little bit about the current, basically the sales AIready, and go through a little bit about the charter, business value and scope, and also the dependencies for choose track, right? We will have the OGC standard working group. Yeah, we have the OGC working group and also have the ISO group. So basically we're link those to the previous standards and cover a little bit about the models. So the sales AIready, I think probably many of you already know that. I'm not gonna, but I'm not going to repeat the definition. But basically, I think they are focused on the satellite remote sensing data, and so they have a special characteristics, and as I understand is more or less they are going to lift those level on data to geospatially registered and radiometrically corrected, and also associated with the different metadata, and also publish and push it into some sort of format which is convenient to different user group. So they have their basic core is have 4 aspects. Basically, they have a general metadata which allow you to identify if this data is usable for you, and also have the per pixel metadata, and then for the 2 corrections, geospatial radiometric corrections, and they have 2 levels of requirements. One is the threshold level, is basically the minimum requirements, and target level, which is basically the desired level, is more or less has some sort of more requirements. And they have their processes, of course, they have developed a sort of have a process to prove and different product family specification, different product. They have so they have a template. Then based on that, supplement your requirements, resources, and basically have some point of contact and different. Also go through the consultation and the consistency check, and accept as a product family specification, and go through the review process, and then push it into their website. I think that's their current process. And those for the review process, I probably just skip. That's current CS AIready, how they work right now. And then so for the OGC, because they want to move this more or less to our standard format, because I think in CS more towards CS Earth observation. So I think they want to generalize it. So that's where they want to bring to the OGC, and also in the same time established ISO standard working group. So basically trying to bring those to more formal standards, and also utilize all those existing models which describe different metadata, like those information models, and also we were put the UML model. If you go through those standards, that's where it comes to. And also, I think OGC standards and also ISO standards were being used. So there were dependencies, or they were being used there. And for the working group, they also recognized that they're going to expand it to beyond Earth observation. So there's a discussion about what is long EO data. Then that's still in discussion, but definitely we're going beyond that. Purely just a set of the remote sensing, and maybe some of those model outputs, and or some of the other different type of data. Maybe some of those data were needed geocoding to bring them to be usable, and with on the geospatial alignment. For the scope, they identified, of course, as a Multipots standard. Basically, I have the fundamental or the core of this standard, and then responding to this the CS AIready more like a different product or specific product, have a family different product families specification, and they're going to be almost the same time. Basically, they were developing the AIready and all in the OGC, also in the ISO. Already established the 19176 working group. So I think that's covered those. So for the OGC standards, I think many of you maybe know some of those. I think in testbed, I think it's testbed 16, right? They have a AIready engineering report. Basically, it identifies AIready more or less in OGC term is considered as coverage or feature collection, whichever you see it. So basically, along this line, so they can use OGC standards to describe or encoding or release those unanswered data. So that's what their vision is. So basically, they will reuse all those to distribute or specify those unanswered data. So for the graded or feature or different things, or so even involved into the newer generation of OGC interfaces, which is based on the OpenIPA technology, which is like IPA features, coverages, all those things. Basically, I think the newer architecture allow the developers to generate some of those automatically generate those stops for your client or server, and then you can reuse this and make it more convenient. And also the newer graded coordinate system, which is has a unified coordinate system. Okay, those are basically for the OGC dependencies. And those, I think most of those OGC standards are some way goes to the ISO 19100 series. So you will see those are more or less corresponding to them, and some of them is the ISO specific, like metadata, and also for the different graded data. I think the code, I didn't put the standard name here, but if you check, they are easier for the graded standard, like LiDAR, different sensors, and also have data quality like a 157, which is a quality specific different quality. And for the provenance, like a 19115-2, now is mostly cover the provenance part, because the data quality part is moved to the 157. And 136 is GML property. That's basically they're more or less the same thing, but in the in the ISO, they have the URMA model. Basically, those will be, when we developed the ISO standard, where we use those URMA model to link them. This is currently, mostly it's based on current CSIRD. They have a 4 aspect, right? General metadata, which cover the different aspects. And also per pixel metadata covering specifically, especially the quality tests based on or observation conditions. So this is more, because the current is leaning towards the Earth observation products. And then when we expand it to long-U data, those may be put at a different level, I think. That's where we're thinking of putting that. But still at the early stage. For the radiometric accuracy correction and or geometric correction, those are the 2 aspects. Bring those data to be some sort of spatial and also thematic alignments, right? That's basically what it means to align those data, which will allow you to reuse in your model. You've at least find some way you can bring those data into your whatever your machine learning model or some of your models. So that's basically probably cover the cool parts and the fundamental part, and we're specify the minimum sets of requirements to be considered as AIready, and also set a different 2 levels, probably corresponding to 2 levels. Still in discussion. I think after this fundamental part completed, then we will continue to do the different product family. That's not, that's still scheduled. And this is a current, more or less the current status. So you will see when it's formed. And I think it's for the fundamental part, we are basically shooting to have at least the first draft by June next year. Right? I think that's for the fundamental part, and then continue to do that will be the different product family specifications. That's basically I think it covered for the AIready, and for the. We have another AIready session tomorrow, and also I think one of the things really related to this data ready group, and OGC have training DML II, which is standardize the encoding for the training data set for AI. So that's where they also cover different aspects, including the quality part, and also have an extension to collect with the stack, basically the Radiant data set, and also they are shooting, of course, they are shooting for more on the deep learning and learning those algorithms, and cover different scenarios like a scene, object, and also semantic on the pixel level, and also up to 3D. Those are, if you're interested, tomorrow, come into tomorrow, and that will give you some flavor. Thanks.
Thanks. And maybe let's take 2 questions if we have any right now. Yes, Ken. Larry, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. One of the things I always thought was, I don't know, a little bit off in the name analysis ready, and what was actually being done, which is that it doesn't really go as far as container specifications, like what are the data formats to be used. So CIOS AIready has always been very focused through these product family specifications on describing the contents, like, what are these fields mean, per pixel metadata, all that kind of stuff, but it never tells you how to package it all up in a way that's what I would consider truly analysis ready. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what the ISO OGC standards group is going to do is the same, like you're going to be focused on that content specification, but nothing about the container that's going to hold that content. Is that true?
I don't know I'm qualified to answer this question, but I will try. So I think it's I think it's most of, there also has a debating on this one, because OGC has an ongoing AIready in the test bed 19 for the had AIready on the standard, more like testing those standards, right? And there's another group which is DataCube. The GeoDataCube is also formed another standard working group. So those are two are more or less cross-linked. So I think they also has a debate on what considered as an answer ready, and it's a depend on the different domain or different application. The readiness can be defined differently. So I think that's also one thing, one way or another. I think, but from the OGC, at least currently, is we're bringing the minimum. So bring the minimum to the table. So basically, at least you can do your alignments. Basically, you can bring those data into your model. But how are you going to into your model? You need to understand what's the phenomena you're observing, right? That's a semantic part, or thematic part, whichever you think. Also, another thing is, of course, you need to have a geospatially and spatial temporally alignments, right? So basically, you have some sort of a geometric correction or registration, which allow you to bring into your model. Maybe your model is in different projection, whatever, and also temporally and the different temporal resolution, which might be different than your application. I think that's what we are right now shooting for, and also, of course, we need to cover that metadata part, which give you a basic idea how to access those data and those things. And also the data quality part, of course, is very important. And also I think Dr. David Mayer mentioned one thing is also for the problems part, which is also important, which we're going to bring those existing standard to formalize those definitions. That's what we're currently trying to do.
Thank you.
I think we have thrown a lot of big words like standards and OGC. And so now, before I lose everyone, now we're going to go into some movement and discussion piece where specifically want to focus on the intersections between AIready and the Nas Ready on that. Thanks, Eugene, for the presentation. Well, yeah, maybe a round of applause for him first. While I can figure out how to minimize the thing. All right, let me go back to my slides. Oops, no, not there, not there, not there. Oops, not there too. I think I can get my act together. Well, what's basically, now I want everyone to move around in the room. I don't believe horoscope, but now it's a time, it's convenient for me to group everyone into different groups. So I'm gonna ask everyone to move around in this room and use this like a schema or use this map. The screen is here, and for people who are born January and February on that corner, and then March, April in the middle, and then May, June in the back. And so move around, so make new friends. Don't share your exact birthday, that's PII. I just did the training yesterday. Don't share your exact birthday. Breakout rooms. And for the online people, we're gonna create a great breakout room. Everyone will be in that room using a Jamboard. Gonna do the same, exactly same, not just yet, not just yet, right. Yeah, what? You can do two, yeah.
I'm actually February, but I have to open the breakout rooms one side.
All right, if everyone can settle down, I hope you remember your birthday. I think that. All right, don't start discussion yet, because there's some instructions on how to do that. So what I want everyone to do is for each group, there will be a flip chart I'm gonna pass around. And on the flip chart, the outcome would be 3 zones. The first zone is to discuss what do you think is the relationship between AI-ready data and the Nas ready data. Try to draw a Venn diagram. I hope everyone knows what Venn diagram is. And on the bottom left side for the zone 2 is talk about the similarities and connections where you all should have access on Sketch for the AIready specification as well as the AIready checklist. And now the zone 3 is to identify the differences for the gaps between the AIready and the Nas ready data sets. So the outcome for each group is to figure out, to draw this, have a discussion, and then we're gonna do a presentation. Oh, well, brief out, not presentation. You don't need the slides, just your flip chart. We're gonna pass that around. Rob, if you want help, pass that around for different groups. And for online people, we have a Jamboard for you to go contribute as well, where there's instruction that how you can draw your Venn diagram on the Jamboard. What do you think the AIready and Nas ready is? And what's the difference, similarity using the sticky notes on that? And so here we have 20 minutes. So we will do a brief out for 10 minutes at the end of the session. Got it? Any questions? What? Well, no, for each group, you're gonna draw that zone. So flip chart, every group will have a flip chart to do it. Yep.
ready for a breakout? Breakout ones?
All right, I think it's on. All right, before I turn into the room, I want to see if anyone online have any want to share their discussion. So the breakout group online, any feedback you want to share or the summary of the discussion you had? Christine?
Yeah, I can jump in. We basically just introduced ourselves and talked a bit about our different organizations and where we see AI potentially being used with our user communities. Really heterogeneous data, from photos and phonology, identification of text of species or organisms, I should say, of doing using remote sensing data, drone and aerial surveys, trying to identify canopies or things like kelp beds and eelgrass, or also talking about the need of using AI for quality control for data. So we just kind of jumped around, and we all were having difficulty with the Jamboard. So we don't have a Venn diagram, but that's a little synopsis, and anyone else can feel free to jump in.
My apologies, that must be the setting issues. Well,
No, for me, it's just that we don't have institutional access to Jamboard, so that's all.
oh, all right, note for next year. Thanks, Christine. Any other feedback online about the session, about discussion you just had? I hear silence, so we're gonna move around the room. I'm gonna carry my phone and let's see how it goes. All right, let's start with the, this is November, December, okay. That's my people. We're gonna share the screen here and. All right, Stephen, assuming you're speaking?
I am. So yes, our initial discussion was around, to what extent is one of them a subset of the other. In the end, we decided they were all kind of, there could be some combination of them, but they can also just be one of them. So analysis-ready data versus AI-ready data versus FAIR. You can have ones that, AI-ready and FAIR, but not analysis-ready data in the CIOS standard and so on. Presumably there is some set that can be all of three of those things. But sometimes you won't necessarily want that. For example, analysis-ready data standard talks a lot about being very processed data, whereas for AI-ready data, you might want more back to the sort of original data sets and the raw data. So you don't necessarily always want to be in the middle, depending on what your application is. So then we had a lot of discussion around things that were in common or not, and a lot of them were in common between, say, two of the three things, but not all three. So, for example, AI-ready requires some kind of example code to be able to load in the data and use it. That's part of AI-ready, but not really part of AIready or FAIR. There's, and as we understand it, we may be wrong about this, things about data access. So FAIR and AI-ready standards talk about kind of how you access the data, but it's not really part of, again, analysis-ready CIOS standard as we understand it. And there's various other bits like that around. So for example, kind of data coverage and bias, interoperability, for example, is in kind of FAIR and analysis-ready data, but AI-ready data standards don't really talk about interoperability as we understand it now. So there's lots of those different things that are kind of in two of them in common, but the third one doesn't have it.
Right, thanks. I'm gonna move my camera now. So this is September, October, yeah. My math is not that great. Who is speaking? Who's speaking? Take pride about your like school poster project. I'm just gonna.
Well, let me. I don't know. We're not. None of us in the group was deeply involved in AI, except. So we were arguing about what the meaning of AIRD versus ARD was, and one of us suggested ARD is whatever you need to have data to be ready for analysis, you have to do that at least for the data to be AI ready, and you may need to do something extra. So that's the first diagram there, Venn diagram. And then there was a counter argument to that. And so we have a Venn diagram that shows AIRD as a subset of ARD. And then we had a question mark between the two and then said maybe there is an overlap. And there is an intersection and there's a non-intersection part as well. So, and we didn't really make much progress beyond that because we were trying to figure out what the difference was.
I think the bottom line summary is we all came here hoping to learn what the difference was because we really didn't know. So thank you for letting us be part of your meeting.
We're inclusive, so thanks for the discussion. Yeah, I think there are a lot of conversation about whether ARD or analysis AIready is completely different or not. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. And who is the speaker for July and August?
Well, I'm the one left standing at the board, so. All right, actually, we had a great conversation, and I think it's like others are gonna see around. By the way, I'm very terrible at drawing graphics, as you can see, and I hope our 2-year-old has better skills than me. In any case, I think we had a great conversation. It was like someone in the front, I don't know your name, but just mentioned, this is all about coming together and coming up with a bridge vernacular, because I think intentionally, from what I'm hearing, we're shooting for the same thing, but we're coming at it probably from a little bit different angle. So, for example, we needed more time, so I'm sure we would have moved these around a little bit more if we had a little bit more time. But there's a lot of similarities. Like, obviously, we're all going for FAIR principles and CARE principles. There's a recognition in the community that labeled data sets for discovery and training new models is of a critical need for all the use cases. So that's a goal. I think there was an obvious balance between containerization and the sort of level of focus at the sort of like granular level versus containerization. I think, Ken, you provoked that point earlier. So anyway, a lot of similarities, and I really think we're shooting for the same things, but that's based on our short conversation. Anybody else in our group want to add color this or add some of your comments as well? Oh, all right, they all agree with me.
All right, I think we're up to the early summer group, May and June, so.
Yeah, but I guess we ran out of time, so ignore our Venn diagram. It's a little bit, immature at this point. But like others, mentioned, a lot of similarities. And when it comes to differences, we kind of feel that like ARD is more focused on content. If you're doing supervised, you require labels, and that goes hand in hand with the quality of labels. Then the data delivery methods may be different. So in terms of ARD and machine learning, maybe you need to have, I guess somebody pointed that you may need some code to actually how to get your data and fit it into something that like your training framework, maybe TensorFlow, whatever it is, the batch processing and stuff like that. No matter supervised or unsupervised or anything, you always have training, test, and validation. Or holdout, whatever you call it. That's very different from ARD. And you have to maintain that, these three are coming from the same distribution so that you are able to generalize. So that's something I guess, it's, we think that it's different. It's different from ARD. You don't have that in ARD. And And Peng actually mentioned this term machine actionable as opposed to machine readable. So AIready is more like machine readable, but the machine actionable. So your model may need to take some actions upon your data. So that's something that may be different. I guess that's pretty much it from our point of view. So anybody else here?
Thanks. All right. I hope it don't make people online dizzy, just moving around with my phone. And so we are at March and April group. Oh, you have a lot of artistic, like.
So we had kind of a hard time thinking about this in terms of a Venn diagram. So finally we came around to thinking about it in terms of a continuum. So really all the data are analysis ready to someone in some context. But on one side you have a human expert who doesn't really need a whole lot of context. Maybe that they're looking at a data set from within their discipline and they're familiar with the data cultures at play, so they don't need a whole lot of extra information. So that's one end of the continuum. On the other end of the continuum, you have an AI that needs all of the context, but not only do they need all of the context, they need it in a computable format. And so that's sort of how we started thinking about it. And that's as far as we got because we were hitting our heads up against the wall with a Venn diagram for most of the time.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Maybe I shouldn't be too like prescriptive about you have to do a Venn diagram. All right. Sure. Go for it.
Yeah, so what we came up with was that the analysis ready really is a subset of being AI ready. I mean, at the end of the day, to train any kind of AI model or AI solution, all your data that goes in needs to be clean, needs to be normalized. You need to have some kind of QA, QC kind of process. I forgot what ARCO meant, but the metadata definitely would help with training up some of the AI models. I think the only thing that was different that we thought of was that separates AI readiness from analysis readiness is typically the labels. But we got a note here that says that labels are often just application specific, meaning some applications may care about the labels a certain way and some may not care about those specific data points. But in my opinion, I think the labels at the end of the day is just another data point that also probably need to be clean, normalized. Like you can't train your model on labels that are majority missing or heavily skewed anyway. So yeah, AI readiness overall encompassing the analysis ready.
Thanks. I thank you everyone for the discussion. All right, I think I'm gonna close out this session with the final 2 slides on the presentation. So just to wrap up on the things that we have talked about today, So within the cluster, we have draft roadmap to move ahead with a few different aspects related to AIready data. So first of all is the AIready data standards with different goals for the short term to all the way to the long term, and then relating to what Ken and others commented on how to automate assessment. So that requires tools and some crosswalk between the AIready checklist as well as some of the existing common data standards that are within the domains like the CF convention and other things. So if already those metadata cover some majority of the checklists, and then those validator can be leveraged when doing those automated assessment if that, for example, for those data conform with CF conventions, then we should be able to automate access for those data set within the CF convention as were there for the data set. And once we have those tools and standards, then we can move ahead with some of the improve the existing data set to make them AI ready, either with especially with all the data centers trying to move towards the cloud or hybrid conditions between cloud and on-prem systems. And then last stage would be the sustained engagement, where we should have a governance about this AI-ready data the effort trying to constantly maintain the checklist as well as the tool development and maintenance for that to make it more sustainable. And I think ESA would be a great location where everyone can come together for that effort. And that is the overall quick overview. And then we would love any feedback at the lunch time for everyone who wants to continue the conversation, since we are 2 minutes away, 2 minutes over the time. And so last is the shameless plug, where for the NOAA AI workshop that this year specifically focused on the data discussion, how we can advance development of the AI R&D in the environmental data science domain using the benchmark. So I think that heavily relates to what AI-ready data should look like for domain agnostic aspects. So we invite everyone to register interest, and this will be a virtual workshop, public and free. So with that, I'm gonna close the meeting by thanking Mike Mahoney, who is supporting the session, the community fellow. So if you haven't say hi or like talk with Mike, please use the lunch as an opportunity to talk with him. And thanks for Larry running the mic and all those people participating in the discussion, and Rob and Carmen and did I miss? Oh, Stacy, who's on the phone, who unfortunately cannot join us right now, but feel free to stop and say hi to Stacy when she got here tonight, right? Thank you, everyone.